The Ink and Paint Club podcast is intended for mature audiences only, so don't tell your parents! Listener discretion is advised.
So we went camping over the weekend. I hadn't gone camping, I think, at all in my 20s. I think the last time I went was like when I was probably in high school, and like this was like campground camping that we did over the weekend. But like the last time I went camping, it was like in the middle of nowhere, like bringing guns and shooting and having to dig holes to put your poop in, like camping.
Shit, real camping, man.
Actual shit, yes, in a hole.
You're listening to the Ink and Paint Club podcast, a proud member of the Geekly Grind Podcast Network.
Hey, what's shaking, everybody? It is time for the Ink and Paint Club podcast. My name is JD, and Matt is here with me.
Hi, I'm old now.
Yes, it is Matt's birthday. Oh yeah, before I forget, Kyle has been drugged into a spirit world. It is currently being held captive by yokai, I think.
Yeah, he's been isekai'd.
Yeah,
isekai'd, if you will.
Yes, Kyle's been isekai'd away. We'll get him back by next week, I'm sure.
Totally.
But yeah, it is Matt's birthday week. And as per tradition, as of like last year on this show, whenever it is one of our birthdays, whoever's birthday it is, they get to dictate what show we're doing for that week. And Matt, tell us what you chose for your birthday this year.
We're talking about Spirited Away, which is also celebrating a birthday of its own. It turns 20 this year.
God damn, I feel old. Christ. Yeah, we're talking about Spirited Away. Studio Ghibli won an Academy Award, which is weird because it's an anime movie, but it's Ghibli, so I think that hardly counts.
Yeah, but I mean, it has like two separate distinctions as far as winning that award. So it was the 75th Academy Awards, and it went up against Ice Age, the original Ice Age, Lilo and Stitch, which the connection there is funny because Davy Chase voices Lilo in that movie and then voices Chihiro in this movie. Treasure Planet, and then Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron.
Their Spirit,
horse movie.
Their Spirit and Spirited Away.
Yeah.
What a year.
So yeah, Spirited Away, to this day, it's still the only film that's won Best Animated that is non-English, or originated from a non-English territory, and is the only hand-drawn movie that's ever won the award too. Every other one's been not 2D. Yeah,
because Princess and the Frog didn't win.
Yeah, I mean, there's been plenty of other, traditional animated.
There's been nominees, but yeah, you're right. That's the only 2D animated movie that's won. Huh.
Yeah.
Didn't think about that. Interesting.
It's pretty wild. So yeah, so that makes it, I think it's like 95 or 98% of winners of that award. They're all like CG. Mm-hmm. Because I think, what was it? Wallace and Gromit won the year it was nominated, right?
I think so.
So then, yeah, a stop motion movie is one. So I think there's like one stop motion, one animated, and then the rest of it's all CG. I think I'm probably wrong on that, like slightly.
Well, yeah, because the award was officially like introduced right at the when CG was starting to become really prominent. So it's when 2D was out the door. So it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I think one of the funniest, at least from like a not like just an outside like production or just like about the movie that I find very funny for some reason, is that for the longest time, this was the highest grossing just pure movie in Japan.
19 years. Like literally just last year.
Which was overthrown by the Demon Slayer movie.
Yeah, so for Spirited Away, it made $305 million in the Japanese box office. Mm-hmm. And then, Demon Slayer made $500 million.
Which, quick sidebar, man, the Demon Slayer movie is just like a worldwide phenomenon because it did like amazing over in Japan. Like I said, dethroning Spirited Away is just the highest grossing movie in Japan.
Yeah.
And then it came over here and started breaking all kinds of box office records with the English release. I don't know if I've said this on the show. Melanie and I actually went and saw that in the theaters last month or whenever. I've never watched Demon Slayer. I went into that movie with zero context and was very confused for a lot of it. And I
recorded an episode.
Oh yeah, I think we recorded an episode and it got fucked up, so you guys never heard it.
The lost episode, one of many.
It will go down with the Peanuts movie review.
Right. Well, okay, so is it only those two that you guys recorded and they got fucked up?
That's the only two I can think of off the top of my head. I know there's been episodes where we fucked up and had to come back like the next day and record it. But
okay.
Those are the only two I can think of that are purely lost episodes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you got the opportunity now. What'd you think about Demon Slayer?
It was alright.
Okay.
It's apparently it is like season 1.5 because it is like plot relevant. So I'd never seen season 1. I've only to this day I think I've saw like the first 3 episodes of it after we saw the movie. So it's all right. I had no attachment. I had no attachment to anyone in the movie, so it's all right.
Right. Well, just to put it in comparison, the top 10 like highest grossing films in Japan. So Demon Slayer is now the number 1 slot. Spirited Away has been, dropped down to number 2, even though it was number 1 for its entire lifespan up until just last year.
Right.
Just below Spirited Away is Titanic, which is like the 3rd highest grossing movie in America, I think.
Yeah.
Now. Then you have Frozen, Your Name, which is another anime movie.
Yeah, I think Melanie's seen it.
The first Harry Potter, Princess Mononoke, and Howl's Moving Castle, other Ghibli movies.
Yeah.
Bayside Shakedown 2, which
I don't know what that is.
And then Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets is at 10.
Yeah.
And then Avatar is just below that, and that's the second. Well, Avatar went back to being the highest grossing movie of all time, I guess, everywhere, right? Because they re-released it in theaters, and it just edged out Endgame.
Man, I don't think that should count. I think you should only count your initial theatrical release. It's like how they keep saying oh, Lion King made all this money because we've re-released it in the theaters 4 times now.
Right.
I saw that shit when they re-released it in 3D.
How was it?
Do you remember? You remember that weird stint? I'm sorry, we haven't even got to Spirit Away yet, but one last quick thing.
We're just vibing.
Remember, about 10 years ago where Disney was converting a bunch of their old movies into 3D? I know we saw Lion King and Beauty and the Beast in 3D.
I do remember when they were doing that. I never went to go see any of those conversions.
I think they had meant to do Little Mermaid, but because those two didn't pull in enough business that they just scrapped it.
The only 3D release of an older movie that I've ever seen Disney do, and I'm not even sure if it was a wide release, but I know in LA they show it every year, but they did the 3D version of Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh yeah, I went and saw that.
Yeah, and so that was technically the first of those, because they did that way before they started doing that slate of those.
Yeah, and I still maintain those were wholly unnecessary because after a while I stopped noticing they were in 3D.
Right.
But I feel that way about all 3D movies, so it's not just them.
Who knows? Maybe Spirited Away will be able to reclaim its number 1 spot if they re-release it in 3D for its 20th.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know what they got planned. I'm gonna just be real frank up front about this. I've seen Spirited Away a number of times over my year, and I fully appreciate the artistry and the beauty that is in this movie. I kind of think it's overrated, and I find it kind of boring.
Okay, that's fair. That's a fair opinion to have.
And I don't know if it's because I've seen it so many times, or if I've always held this opinion, but and I kind of feel this way about a lot of Ghibli movies.
So, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
What was the first Ghibli movie you ever saw, and when?
I think it was Nausicaa, because I think it was Turner Classic Movies was doing a month of Miyazaki like film series. So like every Saturday night they would play a couple different ones. So I think I saw Nausicaa, I saw Castle in the Sky, and Princess Mononoke, and I don't remember what the fourth one was.
Okay.
So that was my introduction to Ghibli. What about you?
Spirited Away was my first Ghibli movie I ever saw. When they released it in the States. I think just on DVD. I don't think I ever saw it because I don't know if they did a theatrical release for it originally. They re-released it. What was it? Fathom Events does like the Ghibli Fest stuff every year now, and they've been doing that for a while. Although I've never seen Spirited Away as part of Ghibli Fest in the theaters. I have seen Spirited Away in the theaters like 2 or 3 times, but it was always the Japanese audio. There was a local theater here in town that showed it because they do like older movies like on Thursday nights, and then there's a theater in LA that I frequent. I probably mentioned it on this podcast before. It's called the New Art, and they always show they always show Ghibli movies, and they show like other anime movies there too. And so I've seen it there like once or twice. So, but I mean, I've seen it when it came out on DVD in the States originally. So I think, well, the movie originally released in Japan in 2001. So probably hit the States in 2002, I think, or maybe late 2001. I'm not entirely certain.
Something like that.
But
yeah.
I just remember it was like one of the first DVDs that my family owned. Like it was that. Like Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, like the Austin Powers, the two at the time. But they're just the ones I can remember off the top of my head. But yeah, so I didn't know what Spirited Away was or what Studio Ghibli was or any of that stuff up until I watched the movie for the first time. And I just remember watching it and just being like enamored with it because I'd, of course... I've seen anime, up until that point, like stuff that they showed like on Toonami and stuff.
Right.
But, I mean, nothing that was produced like this.
Yeah, definitely us Americans were not exposed to like what Japan was truly capable of in terms of animation. I know there was like other like OVA movies. I keep hearing about like people watching like something called Ninja Scroll. I've never seen it, or just like other anime that would work its way over here, but we had never really been really exposed to like Ghibli level artistry up until like Spirited Away finally came over here.
Yeah, well, like because I know Disney did the dub for this movie, so they're the one that brought it over to the States. Before that, I know Miramax did dubs of other Ghibli movies. Like I know they did Mononoke.
I thought Miramax was like a subsidiary of Disney.
Right, but I mean, like, or was it always?
I don't know.
I'm not sure if it always was. Like, so I know that there were dubs previously of other movies. So I think it was Princess Mononoke, and I think it was Totoro.
Yeah.
I just remember because I've heard the story or read the story about. I'm not sure if it was Weinstein directly or just somebody else higher up in the company, but they're talking about wanting to make cuts to the movie or something like that to pace it differently or change the dialogue around. And it's always you always hear the story like that. It's either Ghibli or Toho or whatever. Like sent them a samurai sword in the mail or something with the message no cuts.
Yeah,
that's how I remember about the whole Miramax thing.
That's funny.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess John Lasseter was like the integral part about.
Oh yeah, he and like Hayao Miyazaki are apparently like best friends.
I'm imagining that might be one-sided.
Okay,
we know how Lasseter can get.
We'll just say Lasseter is a huge fanboy of Miyazaki. Let's put it that way.
That's probably a better comparison.
Hayao Miyazaki's like, who is this fat American man, and why do I have to keep meeting with him?
Yeah, like I remember. On the original DVD, and I think it's still a feature on because the Blu-ray release they did in like 2015. It's still obviously Disney, but they have all the DVD bonus features on there. I didn't rewatch it when I watched it on Blu-ray earlier, but I saw that there's an option on there for DVD original feature, like introduction from John Lasseter, and then they have like behind the scenes stuff, like talking about like the voice recording, like for the American cast, and like some other stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
Although we should definitely talk about the American cast because there's definitely some names on here.
There is, but I feel like there a lot of the dubs that I've seen usually have like a lot of like a handful of like big name actors in them. This one is pretty like light on, like, I think maybe Michael Chiklis is like the biggest name in here.
I would say Tara Strong.
I meant like just in like recognizable actors to a regular audience. The rest of them are just like voice actors, like Tara
right.
Strong.
Well, I mean, it's definitely for like you and I who are familiar with like animation and stuff. That's what I meant more. Is that, you know, you see like Paul Eiding, John Ratzenberger, Bob Bergen, Roger Bumpus, Tara Strong. Like those are like definitely like a group there that, you know, they've shown up in a number of other things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, John Ratzenberger, you'd hear in other Pixar or other Disney things, but
right, yeah. So I mean, so yeah, like I feel like this movie's dub really leans more heavy into just like actual voice actors, which honestly I think is better some of the time, because voice actors are more like, you know, this is what they're trained for, whereas like sometimes it can be a little weird when you're getting just a regular actor that comes in and to do voice work. And you know, the old adage where some were like, oh, it's easy, I just come and talk to a microphone, I'll do shit. Yeah. And I'm like, no, it's a little more complicated than that, but you know.
Have you seen the movie in its original language?
I want to say yes. I don't remember.
Okay. Yeah, because like I mentioned, every time I've seen it in the theater, it's always the original release. And this is weirdly consistent, is that every time that I've seen it, I think they're definitely the same copies or whatever, or like derived from the same copy, because they use white unbordered subtitles. And a lot of the time when Haku is on screen, it just gets fucking lost. You can't read it at all.
God.
It's really funny.
If you're gonna use white, give it a drop shadow, give it a stroke around the thing. It's not that hard, people.
Yeah, like of course on the Blu-ray, that's, you know, it's bordered and stuff on there. And actually, interestingly enough, because at least I can't speak to other like Blu-rays or DVDs, but I know like on streaming services like specifically Netflix, whenever they have a production there that originates in Japanese, they'll have the closed captions, but there'll be translations. So even if they have an English dub, there's no specific subtitle track for that. So you'll see like the translations for the Japanese dub while you are like watching with the English dub. Mm-hmm. On the Blu-ray for Spirited Away, they have English for Hard of Hearing and then just English. And so English is the Japanese translation, and then English for Hard of Hearing is the translation for the English dub.
Weird.
So that was pretty interesting. I watched it with the Japanese translation just because I wanted to see like how different some of the lines were, or like how they, you know, kind of recontextualized them or whatever. And there's definitely like some differences there, not like enough that it's, you know, like a huge deal or anything, but I seem to recall way back when, because like I said, I didn't rewatch any of the DVD bonus features, like rewatching it now, but I remember back then they were talking about how they directed the voice actors to perform specifically to match the lip movement from the film. And so how that kind of dictates some of the performances in there. It's definitely most evident with Davy Chase as Chihiro, just because, you know, if you heard Lilo and Stitch, you know what she sounds like, and like, you know, there's a lot of like, but she, you know, she's playing like a little kid character, so the performance there trying to match with the mouth movements a little funny sometimes.
Yeah, and honestly, that's something that's gotten a lot better since this movie, is just like, you know, dubbing from different languages and people trying to match the mouth movements. It's easier in animation to do it. I think I've seen some stuff that's been dubbed from like in live action and stuff, and it is a lot more difficult to match mouth movements with that. But
sure.
But definitely,
like,
definitely in anime, it's gotten a lot better.
Yeah, because like the only one that I can really attest to is the English dub, or one of the English dubs, because I know it has a number of them for Akira.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of because that movie, the lip movements are like very dialed in, like for the Japanese dub.
That whole movie is very fluid.
Yeah,
And I'm not just talking about the giant tumor monster.
Right. Have you guys ever talked about Akira on here?
I don't think so.
Shit, I should fix that.
Probably. I've seen it once.
I've seen it, I think, like 3 times in the theater. I've seen it like every time I've seen it, like at the Newark. I think one of the times might have been the theater here in town, but
Oh, wow.
no, that's a experience. Man, that movie needs to be watched with a giant ass sound system.
Yeah, man. It's fucking crazy.
Speaking of sound, of course. So actually, we should definitely talk. Like, we mentioned all the other Ghibli movies, but specifically that this is Hayao Miyazaki, who is Ghibli basically.
He's not every Ghibli, but he is the majority of it.
He's the one. He's directed all the movies that people tend to talk about when they refer to Ghibli.
Yeah, like it's like if you think of Ghibli, you probably think of Miyazaki.
Which is it is what it is. But I mean, Ghibli does release other movies that are not directed. Like they released a number of movies directed by his son and other people. Like I think I'm still getting around to watching a lot of Ghibli movies. I wanted to experience a lot of these movies for the first time in the theater, just because I didn't get to do that with Spirited Away because I was too young, and that was back when they weren't really doing that. So that's the reason I've seen it so many times in the theater since then. But every other Ghibli movie I have seen in the theater first. Howl's Moving Castle, I saw when it debuted. I actually went to the El Capitan Theater in LA, like the Disney-owned theater.
Nice.
When it came out, and I got to see that there, and that was cool. Every new Ghibli movie since then, I haven't gotten to see in the theater because I haven't actually seen it yet. I saw Ponyo on one of the Ghibli fests a couple of years ago.
I have a funny story, and I don't know if I told it on the show before about Ponyo. So I used to work at a movie theater when I was around 18, and that was about when Ponyo came out, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool, new Ghibli movie, I'm gonna go see that. But I had a lot of time to kill that day, so I made a double feature. So we fucking went and watched District 9.
Oh boy,
before Ponyo.
That's a double feature for sure.
Ponyo was definitely a palate cleanser after that movie.
Yeah, no kidding.
District 9's fucked up, man. But yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine. So the other Ghibli movies that I've seen Princess Mononoke, I've seen Kiki's Delivery Service, I've seen My Neighbor Totoro. Not a Miyazaki movie, but I've seen Grave of the Fireflies in the theater. And man, if you're talking about fucking, that would be a much more of a
you want to get real sad. You watch Grave of the Fireflies.
Yeah, that movie is a fucking bummer.
Yeah,
it's really good, but fucking be prepared to be sad. Like,
yeah, I think I've seen every Miyazaki Ghibli movie up until Ponyo. I think the only one I haven't seen of his is Porco Rosso.
Yeah, I nearly saw Porco Rosso in the theater, but it was like one of those ones in LA, and I had a trip I was making out of the country like when they were showing it, so I had to miss it.
Yeah. So I'm familiar with most of Miyazaki's film work. I even watched his Lupin the Third movie.
That's like the first movie you ever directed, right?
I think so. Castle of Cagliostro is fun. I like that movie. It was weird because the English dub I watched did not, I don't think, had the part 2 English dub that everyone's familiar with the voices of. So
the Adult Swim.
Yeah, the Adult Swim dub.
Right, because they got those dub actors for that Lupin the Third, the first movie, right?
The movie, and I think most of them came back for the part 5 that they are showing on Adult Swim right now.
Oh, cool.
I need to keep watching that movie. There's a fuck ton of episodes for that.
Yeah. But yeah, so there's still a lot of Ghibli movies I haven't got around to just because I've been waiting for, like, to try to go see them at Ghibli Fest or for New Art to show them or for them to show them here in town. But, like, it's a little hard just because, like, I have HBO Max and, like, it has it has all the Miyazaki movies. I'm not sure if it has
it's weird.
All Ghibli movies.
Yeah, it's weird they have they just have a Ghibli collection section. Like, you have DC, you have Looney Tunes, and Ghibli, and there's a bunch of other sections I don't recall offhand, but it's weird. Why didn't Ghibli show up in Space Jam 2?
Well, I don't think is Ghibli owned by Toho? I know they distribute a lot of the movies.
I think Warner Bros. Just has the publishing rights in America right now.
Yeah, so it's weird. Yeah, Ghibli like changes hands a lot. Like I said, I think it was really Miramax and then Disney proper, and then now HBO has at least streaming rights and stuff to them. I'm not sure if if they release a new one over here, they do like the dub. We get in charge of that or whatever. Probably G Kids nowadays. They're the ones that take care of dubbing everything now.
Yeah, right.
Jeremy Snow here, owner and editor-in-chief of The Geekly Grind. I'm interrupting your awesome, regularly scheduled programming to ensure that you know about our Geekly Grind podcast network, of which this show is a treasured member of. If you haven't had a chance to check out our site, you can do so at www.thegeeklygrind.com, and while you're there, check out the other members of our steadily growing podcast family, including the anime-centric Blake and Spencer Get Jumped, discovering new heroes and comic book keepers with Chris and Lance, exploring the vast universe of geekdom with Geeksploration, or of course appreciating animation's finer details with the Ink and Paint Club. Escape your weekly grind at the Geekly Grind.
But I guess we should actually talk about Spirited Away.
Right. Yeah, we've been getting
it's only been probably like a half hour or more.
Right. So you think a lot of Ghibli stuff is overrated and
okay, stuff? Okay. I don't think a lot of Ghibli movies is overrated. I think Spirited Away specifically is overrated. I also think Totoro is too.
What would you say is your favorite Ghibli movie?
Oh, it's a tie between Castle in the Sky and Howl's Moving Castle.
Okay.
Which, oddly, both have castles in them. But my problem, and I finally sorted this out the other day, because I was talking to my wife about this.
Okay.
My problem with most Ghibli movies is that it's a series of things happening, and then it ends. That was my big problem with Totoro. It is a series of things and then it ends. And my other problem is they're so slow. They are very methodical about their pacing, and me as an American, and I'm used to faster paced stuff, but it's just too slow for me most of the time. It's just But again, like I said, I can appreciate the artistry that goes into it. They are all gorgeous, and Spirited Away especially is just an achievement in just animation, artistry and all that. I appreciate how beautiful it is, but it's not a movie I'm just gonna put on at any given time. I need to be in the mood to watch Spirited Away.
Sure. Okay, well, I mean, that's definitely fair. Yeah, so the reason why I asked about, what your first Ghibli movie was and, what your favorite Ghibli movie was is because I've seen a trend online, that it seems to be that, at least for a lot of people, that their first Ghibli movie does tend to be their favorite. So I wasn't sure if that resonated with you in any way.
I can definitely see that. But like I said, I think the first one I saw was Nausicaa, and Nausicaa's good.
Nausicaa's great.
I saw it when I was a preteen, so I probably need to rewatch it to really appreciate it. I kind of thought it was boring too at the time. Honestly, I think if I had to put on any of them at any given time, I'd probably watch Howl's Moving Castle because I just think it's delightful.
Right.
Even though, just side note about Howl's Moving Castle, there's a whole arc in that movie about a war, and I still have I've seen that movie multiple times. I still have no idea what that's about.
For Nausicaa or for Howl?
In Howl's Moving Castle, there's there's a background plot about Howl being involved with a war or something, and I've never understood what that's about.
Now, see, that's another one of those things where I think if you watch the original, Japanese audio track with like the subtitles. I think that might be one of those things where they kind of gloss over like for the English release,
Maybe.
just to kind of streamline it, I guess, because I seem to remember that when I think I've seen Howl's twice, like in the theater, the original release, and then years later, like the Japanese release, and I seem to recall there being like some differences in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I mentioned before, for Spirited Away, there's definitely some stuff here and there, but it's mostly just relegated to, it's whatever.
Right.
I feel like and that's actually to say that I haven't seen. The majority of Ghibli movies I've seen have been in the original release because that's the ones that always show up in the theaters. I know, like, for Ghibli Fest, they will do, like, separate days where, like, they'll show the dub on this day and then they'll show the subs on this other day. And then I've been trying to make it a point to see it in its original release.
Right, yeah.
And then, like, maybe experience the dub later. But at least the dubs for Spirited Away and for Howl's Moving Castle are both like, I mean, I don't know if it's just nostalgia talking, because that's definitely something you have to factor in with this sort of stuff. You get used to how something is a certain way, and maybe it's hard to discern if it's objectively better or not. Mm-hmm. But I don't know.
No, I definitely think Spirited Away's dub is perfectly fine. My only real problem with it is just like it wasn't at the time, but I still maintain that Tara Strong is very oversaturated, so hearing anytime
but she wasn't back then.
She wasn't back then. I'm just saying watching it now is like, it's just like, oh, there she is again. I guess it's the only thing that takes me out of the movie. The rest of it is perfectly fine. Even Jason Marsden doesn't take me out of it.
Max Goof.
But no, yeah, the dub for this I'm perfectly fine with. But I guess like what are your general impressions about this movie? Like, I'm sure there's more. You wanted to talk about this more than just because it's its anniversary,
right? Well, I mean, yeah, like I mentioned, this was like one of the first DVDs I ever owned, so I watched this movie a fuckload of times when I was a kid, and I became like obsessed with it, like. And yeah, it's like one of those things where I probably didn't even need to rewatch it before recording this episode, even though it's been a couple of years since I last saw it, which one of the times I saw it in the theater. Mm-hmm. But it'd been a while since I watched the dub again, so that's the reason why I put it back on. But yeah, it's just it's I don't know. It's funny. It's one of those things where it was my birthday just passed recently. I turned 30, and it's I'm getting older. That's when a lot of people joke about like once you hit 30, it's all downhill. And this movie, it deals a lot with like, I mean, obviously, in a different way, but it has to deal a lot with like, growing up, and sort of dealing with, just like, I would say that that's a general theme behind this movie.
At its heart, this movie has very childlike themes. Like, it is literally about Chihiro moving to a new town. She doesn't know anybody, and she has to be forced to grow up real quick because she and her parents are whisked away to this spirit realm, and she has to work in a bathhouse to basically free her and her parents. So speaking on the bathhouse thing though, because of course this is way back when I knew nothing about like Japanese culture or whatever, and so like I thought a bathhouse is like a made up thing. Like I had no idea that. Yeah, I didn't really question it. I kind of assumed it like, oh, this is just a thing I don't like, a Japanese or a spirit thing that maybe I don't.
It's like a weird fantasy thing. Like,
yeah, I've been to a bathhouse.
Yeah, if I ever go to Japan, I'll absolutely hit up a bathhouse. But it's not something they do over here, so that's like one of those things where they couldn't really recontextualize it for an English audience, I guess. Like, I guess they could say it was like a hotel or something, but you never see like...
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's fine because I don't think a lot of people questioned it. Like, we didn't need to recontextualize it for America because I think that's a problem with... what some people may have when they're trying to localize something is like trying to make something that's more familiar to an American audience, where it's like, I think you can give audiences a little more credit with understanding foreign concepts.
You definitely can nowadays. I can see that's the reason why I kind of brought up is because this is back in 2001, so anime is still like, you know, in that weird sort of period in the States where a lot of the stuff that just getting out of the 90s, a lot of people are like, you know, I think Sailor Moon is probably like the most exposure like people have had to anime, or like, I guess Pokemon
jelly donuts
too. Yeah, and Pokemon. So like a lot of sort of stuff like you know. So there's still a bit of a growing pains as far as like the localization type stuff went. And nowadays, like, you know, you get a lot more direct with that sort of thing. Yeah. You don't get characters' names like being outright changed or something. Like, if they would have like done the dub for this for Spirited Away like probably like 5 years earlier, they would have changed Chihiro's name to like Samantha or something like.
Yeah, I was honestly surprised that they had the balls to keep everyone's name the same.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, okay. Good for you. Good for you trying to stick to the original. I appreciate that. So another thing I can really appreciate this is I think the character design is so interesting in this movie. Just seeing all the different kinds of yokai and spirit, like just in the backgrounds or even like the main characters, just like Kamaji is this like Dr. Eggman looking Spider-Man that lives in the basement with all these little coal spirits.
The soots.
Yeah, the little soot dudes. The Yubaba, who's this giant headed grandma.
Like sorcerer.
Yeah, and of course No Face, who is almost like the second mascot of Ghibli after Totoro.
Yeah. So and then just like a bunch of like just all the background characters of like people, you know, like everyone that works in the bathhouse is like vaguely looks like a frog, or like, you know, some look more frog like than others. And then you just get like all the patrons, like, you know, the radish spirit or like the river spirit that comes through there.
Yeah, who's like covered in mud and gunk, and just watching how like the slime just like oozes off him, especially when he gets into the bath and the water flows out and like you see the globs go out with it.
That was definitely something that like I was in awe of when I saw this movie. It's just like how fluid like works in Ghibli movies, because I remember reading once that like if, for instance there's a scene in this movie where Haku brings some like some buns or something to Chihiro, and she goes to eat them, and this is just right after a scene where she sees her parents as pigs, and so she's, you know, having a tough time and she breaks down crying. And I remember originally watching the movie when I was a kid, and I was just thinking like, Haku mentioned, they'll give you back your strength. And so I thought, so they're like enchanted in some way. And I was like, oh wow, they're doing weird shit to her tears. And of course watching it nowadays, I think, okay, they'll bring your strength back because it's just, you know, you're not you when you're hungry type of thing. And then, because like the tears well up so big and like dropping giant globules and stuff is because, I can't remember who said it, but I think it was directly in relation to, like, because this happens in other Ghibli movies too, but like, you know, sometimes they're not animated realistically, but they're animated, they're representative of how it feels.
Yeah, so that, I definitely get what you mean there, because Ghibli also has another thing, that happens to the characters, and it's like when someone gets really angry or like really intense, you'll see like their hair frizz up. Yeah. And I definitely like I know what you're talking about. Like, it's not realistic, but that's definitely how it feels, and I can really appreciate that kind of I don't want to say
stylization.
Stylization, I think, is a good word. I was gonna say metaphor, but like that's not right. But like you said, just like this is how the feeling is represented, not literally how this would look. And I like that as a stylistic choice.
Absolutely, yeah. And then just going back to like the character designs and stuff, like I said, just a bunch of the background characters, like all the like the little like ghost creatures that hang out like in the town outside of the bathhouse, or like the mask, like the floating mask guys that come off of the boat that like sprout the robes, and like there's a bit later in the movie where like the current group go to visit Zaniba, and like there's like a lamp that's like kind of like Luxo Jr. It's like but it's like hopping on a hand. And like lighting the way and stuff, like or like all the people that are like riding on the train, they're all just like these humanoid like shadow creatures, kind of like the ones we've seen earlier in the film, but like they're wearing like clothes and like but they have no faces, and then like it's just there's a lot of different designs in here that look so different from each other, but because of how fantastical the world is, it all works in tandem with each other.
Yeah, and speaking of, I definitely want to talk about just like how gorgeous the backgrounds and environments are in this movie. Like, I think whenever you watch this movie the first time, you will never forget the kind of feeling you get when Chihiro is like approaching the bathhouse for the first time, and it just lights up, and you see all these people like coming towards it, and just like how intricate and how beautiful that looks. Like it's just like an amazing scene.
In addition to that, I believe this was the first Ghibli movie that kind of started blending in CG elements, if I remember right. And so even like when I was watching this back when I was a kid, and even now, like to see how well it's aged too, but just like seeing 2D animation like on top of like, well, it's not all the time, but there'll be scenes where they're like going through environments, like if they're riding on a train, you can kind of see like stuff at a 3/4 angle, kind of like running on the tracks and stuff, or like there's a scene where Haku is leading Chihiro through like some flowers and stuff, and you can kind of see like it's all it's not it's not 2D, and just to see that juxtaposition there when you're like 10 years old is definitely mind-blowing because you're used to it being like one or the other. Yeah.
And honestly, like, as much as I do I like plot-wise, this movie doesn't engage me. Just the look of this movie is what pulls me back to watch it every time. And I think that speaks just to how well the animation and the design team, just like clearly the amount of love they put into putting this movie together. Like it's very apparent. And
sure.
And even if it's not like a story that really holds my attention, I can at least stop to appreciate just the magic they put into this.
Sure. Yeah, I guess it's just one of these things where, I can definitely see why there would be that you wouldn't really enjoy a story with like a pacing like this, or that's just kind of like things happen and then it's over. Like, I don't know. I personally feel that it's refreshing just because there are so many other movies that fulfill or kind of, fill that sort of scratch that sort of itch for you, that are like, more in, well, I don't want to say more engaging, but just like, much in the same way that, we brought it up a ton of times here before on the podcast, but like I would say that the closest Western equivalent that we have to kind of like the way that Ghibli stuff is paced sometimes is Tartakovsky stuff.
Yeah,
and even then it's not quite the same.
Yeah.
Whereas Tartakovsky stuff is kind of like there's like room to breathe, like in between certain scenes and stuff. But like for Ghibli stuff, it's a lot. There's like a lot of scenes where it's just really there to sort of set the mood, to take in the atmosphere and the environment and stuff. And yeah, and regards to like how the plot, is just sort of like very, for the most part, basic. But I would say that it's definitely propped up by just how magnificent everything else is. Like, sometimes you don't need like an overly complicated plot. Like there's other Ghibli movies that are a bit more involved in that regard, but I guess it just comes down to personal taste. I love like a movie that can just sort of like, I don't know, well, take this for what you will, like I really love David Lynch movies, and there's a lot of moments in those movies where there's like no dialogue and just you're sort of there, where it's like I've heard the technique, or the whatever they refer to it there, as living photography, where it's kind of like there's a scene and it's going, and it's just sort of like you're just taking it in, and it's just, I don't know, I find it very comforting.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah,
And,
I would never fault anybody for saying like this is like one of their favorite movies. Like, I definitely understand that. It is literally just like a personal preference of mine, and I feel bad for even like saying like, oh, it's a movie where a bunch of stuff happens and then it's over. I do think there is an arc here. Like, I definitely enjoy seeing Chihiro's arc from kind of being this like when you first meet her, like, Chihiro is insufferable. She's just complaining about like having to move. She doesn't want to move to this new town. All of her friends are being left behind, and just to see how she forms these friendships with all these spirits, and really how she's like forced to mature. You definitely see her transformation over the course of the movie. Whether I think that the events that get her there are really like narratively paced well, I guess is the only way I can put it. I don't know, but I definitely think there is some kind of progression in this movie.
Right. It's not like say My Neighbor Totoro or
no,
something.
Totoro is definitely like a bunch of things happen and then it ends. Like I said,
right. But like, it's dependent on the type of movie that it is. I mean, Totoro is a movie where it's just like, it's just a bunch of.
It's there to be whimsical.
Yeah, it's just there to be whimsical. Like, and yeah, Spirited Away is like a middle ground between like that and something like Nausicaa or something.
Yeah, like the
maybe
really
not Nausicaa.
heavy plot stuff, but
yeah, maybe something closer to like maybe in between Totoro and like Kiki's Delivery Service or something.
Yeah, Kiki also kind of almost falls into that Totoro territory, but
yeah, but again, it just depends on the with Kiki's, it's like, it's definitely, that's another one that's kind of about like growing up and being on your own and that sort of thing, and there's actually a lot of similarities between those two movies in that regard. Of course, in much different ways. And it's kind of nice because I'm pretty sure if I'm attributing this correctly, but I like that Miyazaki makes it a point to make his protagonists like strong or characters trying to overcome like female characters. Oh yeah.
So it's nice to kind of see that, and Chihiro is definitely like, one of the better examples of that. Like I said, getting to see her transform into this more mature person.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing I meant to bring up, just as far as like, being directed, written by Miyazaki, is that of course he brings with him his frequent collaborator in regards to the music, in Joe Hisashi.
Mm-hmm.
And man, the music in this movie is just, man, I remember it making me feel a certain way, like when it came out, and it still gives me like goosebumps, like when I think about it, and then when I actually listen to it, it's just, there's so many individual like just the scores in this movie that just have stuck with me, like 20 years later.
Nice.
That I can just like think about, and it's just
yeah,
it's great.
I this is one of the things with like just television or films, and I feel really bad, but it's just a weird way my brain works. I very rarely can remember a film score. I can maybe, like, if it has actual songs, I can maybe remember a few, but like I feel like a song, a movie score is there to emphasize the scene. So as long as it is adding to the emotional relevance of that scene, then it's doing its job. It's not there to be in the forefront. And for me, my brain is always focused on that forefront, and the score is always like kind of a subconscious thing. So it's not something I'm actively paying attention to. So therefore, it's like hard for me to remember like looking back at a movie and I'm like, oh yeah, what was the music like in that movie? And I honestly most of the time cannot remember. So I cannot remember what the score for this is like, and I feel horrible because I'm sure it's beautiful.
I mean, that's fair. I think just I'm much more of a musically inclined person as being somebody that does listen to just a lot of music and plays music and stuff.
Right.
That's just something that I do pay attention to in film and television and stuff. And I mean, it can make or break your creative endeavor. I mean, like I said, like, there's a reason why those two have collaborated on pretty much all of their I can't remember exactly when they started collaborating, but I mean, they've done, I think, probably 90% of his movies together. And like, the movies would be so much different with like just any other soundtrack going. Like, honestly, like, take a listen to the soundtrack of this movie, like outside of the context of the movie sometime, and just sort of like kind of feel it out or something, because it's, like I said, it's fantastic. Like, of course, all the other scores that he's done for the other Ghibli movies have been just as great too, but it's just one of those things where nostalgia definitely prevails because of how many times I've seen this movie and experienced it over and over.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
Just, you become closer with every sort of time you revisit it, and sometimes it just.
Sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
That's fine. I'm just saying that the music is, even outside of the context of Spirited Away, is just, it's fantastic score, and it's just it's amazing.
Yeah, and that's great. I could definitely like appreciate like it ingraining in someone like that. I honestly wish that I could appreciate it more after the fact. But unfortunately my brain just does not function like that.
That's valid. That's fine.
Yeah.
We all experience things in different ways.
True. Right. But yeah, like I think overall what the takeaway, at least in my situation, is that like I do like this movie. I like it for how it's made. Over the years, maybe because I've seen it so many times, I've just like kind of fallen out of love with its story. But I will definitely watch this numerous more times in my life, just to see the art of it, to see like the intricate backgrounds and characters, and just all that stuff is just so amazing to look at. So don't take away that I hate this movie from this podcast, because I don't hate this movie.
Right, you just say that it's a little bit overrated, and that's a fair sort of summation to make. I mean, but there is a reason why this was the highest grossing film in Japan for 19 years.
Oh no, yeah, I can definitely.
Like, as far as like how Ghibli is regarded over here, like it's a gospel over in Japan.
Yeah,
and,
like they are the Disney
specifically.
They are the Disney of Japan.
Yeah.
So like when a new movie from them comes out, it is borderline a national holiday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Much like Dragon Quest.
It's big. Yeah, I was about to say it's as big over there as Dragon Quest. It's like I mentioned, there's still a lot of other Miyazaki and just Ghibli movies in general I still need to watch, but I think I know that Spirited Away will just always be like my favorite of all of them. It's just one of those things. It's like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people, their first Ghibli movie just tends to be what their favorite Ghibli movie is for the rest of their life, and I think just Spirited Away is definitely mine.
Yeah, and man, if you're gonna have to pick a favorite Ghibli movie, Spirited Away is not a bad one to have. So, I definitely think it's deserved. Well, Matt, is there anything else you would like to talk about this movie before we wrap up?
I think we talked about plenty about the movie and plenty of stuff not about the movie for this episode.
Yeah. So I hope you enjoy the Spirited Away and the stream of consciousness conversation.
Yeah, but I would say it's still like, related in some fashion.
In some fashion.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what to kind of expect from this show.
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys, thank you all for listening. In the comments, let us know what your favorite Ghibli movie is. Let's get that conversation going. That'd be cool. I'm sure everyone has their own different answers, but yeah.
Yeah, tell JD how wrong he is about it being overrated.
Oh, I'm sure they will. I'll get letters. No death threats. I think that's where I draw the line, but
just hate mail, but no death.
I can take hate mail. I can take letters telling me that I'm wrong. Believe me, that's perfectly fine. I'm used to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody, thank you all for listening. Always appreciate it. Yeah, just stay safe out there. We'll catch you next time.
See you later.
I kind of lost my train of thought there at the end.
Thanks for listening. You can find all the links to our social media pages in the episode description. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and join our Discord. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. The Ink and Paint Club is happy to be part of the Geekly Grind Podcast Network. We'll see you next time.